Okay, so this is going to be a tutorial on how to create this contour layer that you can then drop on top of your minimap artwork. First thing we need to do is we need to open a game layer that has the actors for the minimap or the map corner actors. The first thing we've got to do is we have to go in and we have to copy the locations of these, which you can do easily by copying and pasting into a text file. Then what we can do is we can clear that. Next thing we need to do is we need to make a copy of the geo layer, or a duplicate of the geo layer, and we're going to name that cam contours, and we're going to open that. Okay, so I've got it open. The first thing we need to do is we need to delete all of the static meshes from the level. Okay, that's done. We need to then go to the foliage and delete all of the foliage assets. Yes, I do. Then we need to go to the landscape, splines, and this might take a little while. You'll have to spam through this at some points sometimes. Select a control point, select all of the control points, delete, and it's just asking whether I want to join stuff together, which I don't. So you got to delete all of your splines and roads. Once that's done, and you got a clear level with nothing else in it, go back to select mode, get rid of this for a minute. Now what we have to do is we have to actually add the material that generates the topography layers. This is the one that I got off someone that was very helpful. I've forgotten who it is. I'll try to remember and mention them if I can. Make yourself a material that you're going to use as the new landscape material. Put this stuff in as you see it. These parameters, they're from the last one I did, so don't take too much notice of them. The highest Z parameter will be found by putting an actor on, just an empty actor on your highest peak point, and finding out what in round numbers, or in rounded off, no decimals, rounded off number, whole number, the height of that actor. Then your lowest, it can't be, apparently it can't be less than or 0, so I just make it 0.1, so it's only 1 unit, so it's 10 centimeter, or 1 centimeter, sorry, above 0 for your usually for your your ocean level or whatever. Or if you've got real world data, punch them in as units. It's all got to be done in units, not meters. The steps is how many steps between the lowest and the highest, and that is pretty easy to work out. You've got to get the max height and truncate that to a whole number, which is just an example, divided by the desired contour interval in units. So for 10 meters, which is 1,000 units, you divide it by 1,000 and you should get a result of 4.425 for the number of steps. So for instance, I had a 10 meter interval on this one, so I ended up with divisions at 10 meter intervals. So once you've done all that, save that and keep it for yourself. The next thing we need to do is we need to go to the landscape and replace the material with the new one, and then you'll get this. It'll come up a bit. It won't be correct if you put it in with the original numbers, obviously, unless your terrain happens to line up exactly with the previous one. We also have to add to the levels, we need to add a lighting level so that the minimap generator can actually see something. I've made one, which I've called the lighting level common for contours. Now this lighting level, I've left it as is pretty much. The standard lighting though, I found I had to turn the sky sphere contrast down to 0. This is really weird. If I turn it up, you'll see what I mean. So you get the least unrequired shading. That makes the image really, really messy and really hard to deal with. So turn that to 0 so that you lose virtually all of that. And turn your sun brightness down to 0. Okay, so once you've done that, go back to the persistent level. We're going to have to add in now 2 actors for our map corner so that we can get everything scaled and aligned correctly. So we go over basic empty actor, go to my notepad, I can close that now, save, whatever, and copy the actor 0 coordinate into here, and copy the, place another empty actor and copy the other coordinate into that one. Now we've got our actors, are set up exactly the same as the normal level where you're doing your minimap. Bear in mind, if you have different positions for different layers, you're going to have to do this per layer, unless you're really good at scaling and lining stuff up in Gimp. The next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we have the landscape LOD fixed at 0, which it is. Okay, so now the next thing we've got to do before we go and clean everything up a little bit, because I do have jaggy lines here, and they need to end up being relatively smooth. Contour lines are not jaggy, they're nice and smooth. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my peak, and I know my peak is up here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get, again, an empty actor. I'm going to call it peak. I only have one peak, so that I'm worried about anyway. I know it's this central peak in the middle is my main peak. No one is ever going to go to any of the other peaks, so it's not relevant. Looks pretty good. Anywho, so that's my peak. Now, here's my number here, which is, I'm just going to set this to a round number, so it's 76.93 meters high, so 7693. That's where I've got to put in here. Oops, 7693. And my steps, I'm going to stick with a 10 meter interval, so it's going to be 7.693. For 10 meters, it's really just shifting the decimal place. It's that easy. Apply that. Now I should have an accurate thing. Now I'm going to also put in my mesh, which is my ocean plane, as a reference for the water. I'm going to zero that out, and I'm going to make it 5,000. Whoops. so that I have my water reference level. Now to check this, what you can do is, it's really easy, is to get another empty actor, chuck it in, set that to 0, go down to it, and you can see it's sitting on the water, and sit it at the edge of the water. Now I know that that is accurate, and we got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 meters. So if I go and chuck another one up at 70 meters, set that to 70 meters. Oops. It's pretty good. So I know that's accurate. So I know that I've got accurate deviation intervals. Okay, so now that's done. Now it's a case of going to the top view and having a look at how crusty it is. It is a little crusty, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that up using the landscape tool. I'm going to sculpt, smooth. I've got it turned right down to, well, you can see it's well below 0.1. And basically what I'm doing is, like for instance these jaggies, I'm just going to smooth them out because contour lines are not jaggy, they're nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a bit of time just quickly running around wiping this down and give myself some nice smooth contour lines, and I'll be back after that. Okay, so I've just finished off that. That just took me about probably, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. There's actually a fair bit to scrub over in this because of all the river and stuff, but I've now got, relatively speaking, nice nice smooth curves everywhere for my contours, so it's going to look a lot better. Now, so we've got the maximum height set in here, and we've got the steps and everything, and we now know that we've got an accurate division between, or subdivision between, our contours. So the next thing is to make a minimap and see what it looks like. So yeah, I'm just going to dump it in here somewhere. So let's, whoops, no, it doesn't matter. Let's generate one, thank you. Go to our get our actor and actor 2. Actor 3 is, I should have renamed these. Okay, so I've got my actors plugged in, blah blah blah, generating minimap. See what happens. Okay, now got a minimap which is pretty good. There's a fair bit of noise around here. I still don't know how to get rid of this noise. I can't get a perfect posterized version pardon me, rendering, but you can see we've just barely got the white up on here. Okay, so save that. We'll save that, and we'll save everything. I should have just done that. Asset actions, export. Okay, in Gimp now, I found that using the fuzzy select tool actually made things a little bit easier. So I want to separate the waterline first, so I'll click and drag to the right, and that will give me a nice selection. If I click and drag to the left, you can see it makes a messy selection, so click and drag to the right will give you a much better selection. I'm going to now go to select to path to commit that to a path. Let it do its thing, otherwise it can mess it up. Then we have our path, select none. We have a nice path there for our line later on. I leave these paths turned on as I do them so I can see where I am up to. Now it's a case of just going through and doing the rest. This is not this can be a little tricky sometimes to get it right. That one worked. Once I've done this one, I need to hop across so that I get this one only. I don't want to reselect this or get another selection on that line. So there we go, like that. And commit that to a path. Turn it on. Select none. Now I need to just do this for all of the other sections as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Shift to add to selection as I go along, so that I can do some larger chunks all at once, or get more of it done all at once before committing to a path. I'm going to do all these lower lying bits, the simpler parts first, and when I've finished doing all the selections and committing them all to paths, I will come back and we'll go on from there. Okay, some of the selections might be quite difficult to get without being too noisy. For instance, down here I've got a fair bit of noise because this just didn't select up very well. I'm not actually worried about these because the bulk of my map is a rectangle about that wide and almost the length of the map, so I need most of these, but these ones over here, particularly past about this point and past about this point, really don't matter, so I'm not at all worried about these. I just want some of it in there. But this one here I kind of need, well, I don't actually need it, but I'd like to get just at least these ones here, not worried about the back end of it. So I was having trouble before when I was trying to select it. I was getting this sort of mess happening. So see, now that one's selected up for some reason. When I selected in the different color, it selected that better. So I think it's to do with the contrast between the colors. So I'm just going to commit that one anyway, and then we'll try to get the top. That's really messy. Okay, so I found sometimes you can drag it and it makes it messier. Sometimes you just click and it'll magically select everything. You might have to persist a little bit. Now I think I have now done all of my contours that I need, and it looks like I have, yes. Okay, so the next step is to get rid of the background, the original image. So we're going to delete that layer, and then we're going to create a new layer from visible, so we end up with an empty transparent layer, and all the paths are sitting on top of them. That's fine. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to find the water one. We're going to keep that separate at this point. I'll unselect that, sorry. So all of the actual contour layers, I'm going to right click on here and then merge visible paths so that all the contours become a single set of paths, and we've got our water one separate. So now I've got all of this done, I'm going to save as, because I'm going to save it as a project file. I've already done this before, so I saved it as GeoContours lines for just the contour lines. So I'm going to save that. And then I went into Windows Explorer, and what I did was I made a copy of that one that I've just saved, the Gimp project, and copied that or duplicated it, and I renamed it to Waterline, because then what we need to do is we need to actually get the waterline, and we're going to export this as a path. Then we're going to go into the project file. Now I exported this as camwaterline.svg. When you export it, as your name, it comes down here with export all paths or export the active path. It doesn't actually put the .svg, so you need to add the .svg into it. Otherwise, it won't export it as a tag, as a file with an extension on it, and it can't then import it. So then what I did was I opened up the Waterline project, which I had just duplicated and renamed it Waterline. I've opened that up, and where is it? And then it's a case of going into here and then going into the paths and then importing the path. And Gimp always forgets where you've been. Where are we? In here. Import the path you just saved. I'm not going to do that because I've already done it, and it'll drop it in on here. So now what we've got is we've got two files. We've got one with the waterline separated from this one, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this path so that I have an image with the waterline on it and an image with the contours, because we want to stroke them and control them, paint them separately to each other. Okay, so the next bit now is stroking these lines. The waterline one, I actually have, I remember where I put it now, Topo Map Legend. I went Googling and got myself a Topo Map Legend of Google's, so that what I could do is I could open that in here, and where are we? I made myself some swatches of the colors that I'm going to be using for the roads. Basically, I just used this tool here to pick up the color and then adjusted it to what I wanted, and just then painted a blob. So I've got my colors that I'm going to use for the water body and the outline of the water, as is seen here, and we've got forest and then scattered trees, bushes, etc. We've got our contour lines in brown and the roads in red. Now the contour lines in brown, I'm doing that because I'm doing a topographic map. If you're going to put contour lines on your existing minimap image, you might want to use black instead of brown, because then it'll stand out a lot better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit this just out of the way over here, because I'm going to want to get to the swatches every now and then. So the waterline one, what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the outline color and select that. So we've got our waterline, which will be the actual stroke on the line. So I'm going to stroke this line with that color. I'm going to use 4 pixels. That seems pretty good from playing around before. Line style, make sure it's actually a solid line. If you've been messing around with these, then it's probably not a solid line anymore, so make sure you do that. Stroke the path, and then we've got now nice blue lines for our edges. I'll turn that on again, and now I'm going to do is I'm going to select the fill color, and I'm going to fill path with the solid color and fill. So now I have my water with the nice dark blue line on it. Okay, so this bit is now done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this as my waterline TGA. So I now have a waterline level that I can add to my map, topographic map project. You could also add that image to your minimap to, if you wanted to make the water blue instead of what it normally comes out in the minimap generator in the SDK. The next one, now we're going to do the contour lines. So again, I'm going to get my picker and I'm going to pick the brown for the contour lines, and then I'm going to stroke that path. These ones are going to do 2 pixels because I don't want them too heavy. I'm going to stroke that, turn it off and have a look, and we now have nice contour lines. Okay, that's done. I'm going to also export this as my contour lines. Replace that. Export. Okay, next step is to put in the elevation marks. I know from experience that the best place to do it from this one is up through here so that the numbers don't get stacked on top of each other and that sort of thing. So we need to add a text item. I'm using Calibri Bold. It just is a bit more readable, I feel. I'm using a size of 30 and type in 10 space meters. Now I'm doing it that way. It's, I don't know, can't recall exactly if it's done that way on a top map, but I think it usually is. Now we go up to our transform tools and rotate. You can't use any of the keyboard commands while you're in text. And we need to rotate it approximately, move to line up with the contour line, like so. And we need to do that for each one of these. The easiest way I found to actually do this is to, that can go, delete layer, that was a mistake, is to go in and duplicate the layer and with the move tool move it, go up to the tools, text, click on it. It'll ask you, warn you that it's going to remove all of the transforms you've done. That's fine. So, select the number you need to change because I need to go to 20 meters and go up to tools again. Tools. Oh god, I'm all over the place. Rotate again, rotate it to approximately where the contour is and then place it over the contour. Do this for all of them up to there and I'll be back. Okay, I've done all my contour interval marks. The next thing I've got to do is put in my peak text, which is going to be black because I want to set that out apart from the contours. Again, I'm going to go same size, 30 points, and I'm going to put a star in there for the actual point, and I believe it was 76 meters. Pretty sure it was 76 meters. You'll have to make a note of that, or yeah, just make a note of what your peak is in whole meters, and then that can stay horizontal, and we're going to move that, and I recall from memory that my peak was about here, so I'm going to put it about there. And that's the marks put in. Now the next stage is to go into tools, go into paint tools, eraser, and that's big enough. What we're going to be doing is erasing the line, the contour line behind the numbers so that it's visible. So we're going to go to the visible layer, which is the contour layer. I should rename that just to how do we rename a layer? Oh, that's right. Contours. So, you know, we're now working on contour. So we're going to erase just behind them a little bit like that, so that they're separated from the line and they're readable. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's got to be fairly neat. I'm only going to be doing this for this central peak in the map. I know you can't see this probably very well. No one's going to be going to any of the other peaks, so they're irrelevant. And this is right in the middle. It's relevant, and it's going to give people a point of reference. Alright, so that's all done now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now, I'm happy with this. I've completed it, so I'm going to export all of this. And oh, hang on, first I've got to do is I've got to okay, so I'm going to save it first. This is a good idea, is to actually save it or export it. I'll just do it manually. Export it to the contour lines to update it. Export. Okay, so I've got a copy of all of this still separated so that I could still work on it at some other point. I'm going to now merge the visible layers into one, and I'm going to export as contour lines, let's call it final. Export that, export. So that's the final version is now my layer that I can drop into my topographic project. I'm going to go up to undo history and go back so that all my layers are still there, and that's my saved image, so I'm pretty much done with this now. The next step is to start now this is now suitable for dropping straight onto a mini-map. If you've done it in black, it'll show up really well. If you've done it in brown, it's going to be a little bit hard to see, so black's probably a better idea for a standard mini-map, but this is ready to go now. You can drop this in, and you can drop the water one in as well. The water one, if you just want to stroke the water one and not actually do the fill, then you can stroke the water one and drop that in with just the blue lines to demarcate a water line. So they're done. The next step is to go in and create the actual topographic map. But I'm going to do that in the next video.